Hello. This video and the two that follow will be documenting the creation of a graphite drawing using a cross-hatching technique. But first I thought I would just show you the kind of setup I have in terms of filming the series here. And just kind of show you what I'm going to be drawing a picture of as well. It's important to kind of think about preparation, in terms of clearing a space, getting the correct light and all that sort of stuff. So I just wanted to kind of show you that in terms of what I'm doing. I initially made the video from the beginning in terms of the white sheet of paper, but that video got corrupted. So after I did the second video, I had to go back and restate it. So in order for it to match up perfectly, I had to do a little bit of an outline there so that I could get this first video to match with the second one. So this will speed up, so start to go a lot faster. But I first wanted to kind of talk a little bit about, how to kind of lay the drawing out. Now, no matter what you're drawing, I don't know if you'll be drawing books. That would be my suggestion, maybe a stack of books or an open book. In this case, I have a stack of books, kind of at skewed angles from themselves, and also the whole bundles in a 2-point scheme with a rock and a ball. Simple objects, but I find that kind of simpler things end up being the most beautiful things when all is said and done in terms of drawing. So you can see I'm still using the ruler here, right, to kind of block this drawing in. I'm not certain about that here. I start speeding the film up a little bit here. I'm not, certain about where the edges are, right? So you got to kind of do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines. I find that that's very difficult for students to do. They put one line down and think that's the end, of the story. So here I kind of stopped the video, and I just want to talk a little bit about some concepts that are going on here. When you start your drawing, think about composition. So that blue line indicates kind of the background, right? Left side, and then there's the rock, so there's 2 separate shapes there, and then that indicates the right side. So I got 3 separate shapes, and then the bottom. Okay, now we got 4. So I'm kind of thinking of this in terms of flat shapes when I compose this drawing. And then I kind of cut the books in half. So you can see, thinking about the way things are laid out on the format is really, really important when you make a drawing. Oftentimes students will just plop things right down the middle. Notice how I have the book going off the bottom of the page there a little bit, just to make it interesting. Almost, the rock's almost going off the top as well. So because this is a 2-point scheme, which is what I want you guys to do, the two lines that represent the 2 parallel lines that represent one, opposite sides of a plane are going to one vanishing point, and of course the others are going to that. So those 2 parallel lines converge a bit, right? Of course, the vanishing points are way off the edge of the sheet of paper, but you got to keep that in mind. Now the next thing is, how do you figure out what the angle of those are, right? So you have to put your pencil up. Keep it parallel to your body. We talked about this technique, and approximate the angle. So imagine that blue line is my pencil, and I'm memorizing the angle, and you memorize it relative to a vertical or horizontal. In this case, it's a horizontal, so that'd be a little bigger than 45 degrees, right? A little larger relative to the horizontal. If I'm relating it to a vertical, in this case, a little less than 45 degrees. And the other thing you need to think about is angles in relation to one another. What is the angle of one line relative to another? What kind of shape is being formed between those 2 angles that are defining the edges of a form? So that's what I've outlined there. See the real thin slice there between the 2 books, right? One going at a slightly skewed angle from the other. Same on that side, right? The angle of those books, the way I position them, aren't lined up parallel to each other. So I got to really figure out what the relationship is between those angles. Very subtle stuff going on here. And then the last thing is visual measurement. Excuse me. And that never goes away. You always have to create relationships across the picture plane. In this case, I'm comparing the height of that book versus the depth of it. So I've got 1 there, and then I just, would use my pencil, right, and stack that upward. There's 1, and then 2. So the depth of the book is equal to 2 of the height, okay? And you can do that everywhere in the book, or in the drawing, and on the books too. So you got to there's 1,000 visual relationships you can make in a simple drawing like this. You just got to be inventive and pursue that. So, as I mentioned, this drawing is going to be executed using parallel hatches as a way to build up, and also cross hatching as well, as a way to build up value in the drawing. In the charcoal drawing, we just kind of, used the side of the charcoal and laid that down, right? So here we're going to build value over time. It's going to be a slow process by using hatching technique. And you can see here I'm using the ruler as a way to kind of control that, right? You don't have to do that, but I like doing it, and you'll see why. I'll kind of look for an example here in a second. In terms of using the ruler as a way, and you'll see it throughout the drawing, as a way to protect a particular edge when I draw it, in terms of doing the parallel lines up next to it. Right now, though, I'm just getting kind of a flow going in the drawing, just thinking about cutting things in, getting the background obviously is getting, a little darker than the top of that book, but now I'm kind of darkening up that book. Notice those hatches are kind of, they're perpendicular to the relative edges of that book, right? So, and you could do that, or you could do a 45-degree angle. But I like doing that at the beginning of the drawing because that starts to kind of infer a sense of plane, right? Those lines are kind of receding back in space, and they're paralleling the edges of the book. So the parallel hatch will be doing 2 things in your drawing. It will be creating value, tone over time, but it also will be a way for you to create a sense of, a plane or a plane on, you're going to be able to kind of relay that idea of a flat surface moving back in space, just by using those lines as a kind of a parallel or perpendicular positioning to the edges of the book. And you could do this on organic. That rock, you'll see, I'll start to play around with that later in terms of using parallel hatches up there to try to kind of describe the planar quality of that rock, even though it's an organic form, right? There's kind of edges in that. You'll see later on how I kind of start to reveal that. So just getting a flow go. And then the other thing the marks do is create energy in the drawing. So a drawing is as we talked about, before, and we'll keep talking about it. All drawing is kind of energy field in a certain way, right? How you do it, how you make it, is almost more important than what you're drawing a picture of. There's some caveats here, you're a conceptual artist or whatever, but think about kind of the greatest landscape painters, right? Or portrait painters or whatever. They're doing the same thing, but the ones that stand out are, there's kind of a transition. I kind of merged so that I could kind of cut down on the time. By the way, this drawing, the whole drawing from start to finish took about 4.5, 5 hours. So I compressed it into 3 10-minute videos. The greatest, painters, like a great portrait painter, what makes one stand out from the other is how they paint the portrait, right? Not who they painted the picture of or what landscape a landscape painter happened to be painting a picture of, right? So it's how they did it. So process is really important in terms of art. And that's why I've been really trying to get you guys to pay attention to structure in your drawing, i.e. using that ruler endlessly. It just, because we're used to not using it, right? So it is difficult to use, but it's really important because it's easy to kind of soften up the drawing. It's almost impossible once you're into the drawing to kind of get that structure into it. So you got to do that from the get-go. I tend to kind of keep whacking away at that notion the whole drawing. But so you can kind of see this rhythm that's starting to emerge, right, between the verticals, the horizontals, throwing some angular, kind of odd angled parallel hatches in. And so there's this kind of push-pull. Not only do I get a push-pull from the composition, but there's a push-pull energy-wise in the drawing, right? This kind of patterning starting to emerge. And that's the beauty of parallel and cross-hatching, is you can kind of start to really get a flow going energy-wise. And no curves yet, right? That ball that I'm drawing down there is a curved form, obviously. It's a sphere, right? But I'm not drawing it like that. I'm just doing these kind of little patches of parallel lines at different angles. You can kind of see how I'm starting to develop that sense of, there's another transition there, planar transition by the direction I use that. And what you can do too with the graphite, by the way, is you can kind of wipe it down. That's what I'm doing when my hands are raking across there with a paper towel or something, just to push things back a little bit. You don't want to blend. You don't want to lose the marks you're making. Those are everything in your drawing. And you're going to bury them. You have subsequent marks going over the top. So, realize that these marks are just a foundation. But that's the other thing. People are always in a hurry. They want to get to the finished product right away. Impossible. So you realize you're setting the stage. You're at the beginning of a drawing, you're creating a foundation. Now I'm going in and subtracting. So I get the wide eraser, and I'm going and pulling away some of those marks that I've made to start to get this push-pull in terms of value, right? So the background's lightening up a little bit relative to that. I got a deep kind of cast shadow in that area on the outside, or the right side of the rock there on top of the book. So I'm kind of just starting to play with the angle of that cast shadow a little bit. And a little bit of cast shadow on the right side of the drawing, adjacent to the right edge of that biggest book, right? So starting to document that stuff. But you can see how just laying these marks down over a long period of time, rubbing it down just a little bit. Again, you don't want to blend them away. That's the last thing you want to do. You want your drawing to have that energy, that vibration. But you can see the values are starting to build up over time, right? You just got to be patient with these drawings. Yeah, we're kind of getting to the end of this video here, and then I'll take up where I left off on this video. But you'll see on the next one how this one's kind of just a structure, kind of just starting the drawing, kind of getting the ball rolling, no pun intended. There's one there, obviously in the drawing. But just starting to get a feel for the whole thing based on the visual measurement, angle approximation, all that sort of stuff, composition. The next one I'll start to kind of build up the values more in the next video. Start to kind of crank up the intensity of the darks more. Start to build it up. And I'll shift probably, I have like a 2B right now pencil, and I'll probably shift to a 4B, I think, in the next drawing. So, okay. Thanks, and hopefully you'll see you in the next video.